Oh, we're live!
Ah! And
Wait, did you record?
I did!
Oh!
And we're rolling! Hi guys,
Fuck!
I'm Ben Farmer. Fuck! And I'm a cinephile.
I'm Megan Carver, and I'm a cine-newbie. We watch all kinds of movies, new and old.
And we let you know. And we...
Wow!
I don't think I've messed that up one time.
Not once, Benjamin John Wesley
Here we
Farmer.
go.
Not
Here we go.
once!
And we let you know if you should watch them too. Welcome back to So I Married a Cinephile. Sort of on the bandwagon of our summer blockbuster series.
Yes, indeed.
And we did it again. We watched a movie that was released in theaters on July 7th. We watched this movie on July 9th.
This happens to us all the
time. All the time.
Where we will record a podcast and then realize after we recorded the podcast or whatever that we watched the movie within like days of its anniversary date. I don't know how we keep doing that.
It's crazy how often we do this. So
I don't know if I love the microphone being right here.
I didn't even notice until you said it.
Really?
It looks like I have like...
For those who are listening to the podcast, this is, or if you're blind, Ben has positioned unwittingly the microphone so that it looks like it's kind of his penis. And now he adjusted it further, so if you heard that adjustment, that's what it was. Christ on sale. All right.
We did click that it was not safe for kids. So
this is true.
We're going to move the mic.
This properly out of the way. So sorry.
So sorry. For the feedback.
So sorry.
There we go.
Sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
There.
We've never had it in the picture.
It's a podcast.
But people don't know that we use a microphone.
Do you think
people don't know that? They just
good.
Magically show up.
We are professional actors.
We are professional actors. So we know how to
get our voice in our mask.
We project so well that we don't even need to make a phone call for you to hear our voices. That's how good we are.
Admittedly, I was reciting Shakespeare on my walk with Rocket today.
Pause. This is something Ben has always done and probably will always do. He'll be walking around the house and I'll just hear him go, "Now, what? Tyrant." And I'm like, the fuck is, what are you talking about? And he's like, "Oh, I was just reciting something from Hamlet." I'm like, what? He's like, "Well, so you don't forget it."
Right. The shit just stays fresh in your memory if you keep reciting it. So
just in case. In case you need to pull some Shakespeare out of your pocket.
Megan, how are you?
I'm okay.
You're okay?
I'm going to be, you know what? I'm going to be transparent because I believe in being a neurodiversity ambassador. Today was a rough mental health day for me. It was not a bad mental health day, which you helped me kind of put in perspective, but it was a hard mental health day. I have anxiety and OCD, and when I'm dealing with a lot of stress or a big change or I don't know, maybe come to terms with the fact that we were forced to leave our home within the matter of months and had no say in the matter. Yep. And now we're living in a wonderful house that's not our own. And we also, I've had a job change and you've had a job change. And, you know, there's some grief associated with that. So maybe it's time to just honor that shit.
Yeah.
So, so today was just a lot of processing and being kind to myself, which is very frustrating for somebody who likes to be busy. I don't want to stop. So I'm okay. I'm also weird because it's like, this is my first full week of being freelance.
I really enjoyed it.
Did you?
Honest. I loved it.
Did you notice?
I was thinking about it a few times this week about how great it is to, have sort of both of us in roughly the same room, which is not that big of a change, but at the same time, you are not tied to phone calls, to the litany of what you used to do in your old position, which was very taxing.
Yes.
And you had like allotted hours and stuff like that. And you more or less do in this one, but it's a little bit more freelance. There's a little bit more flexibility.
Right.
We had the time to put ourselves on tape this last week.
That was really fun.
Thankfully. So,
and I also had time to do an audition for an audiobook.
Yeah. And also not feel as overwhelmed maybe to try and get to everything and being able to create your own schedule, I think just gave or gives you a lot of power and flexibility.
Aww.
So kudos.
Thank you.
Mazel tov. And yeah, I feel like it's just going to get better with.
I think so too. It is going to take some getting used to because I'm like scared. It's like I remember. This is so weird that I remember this. I remember my first week at the high school that I went to, which was a private high school, and it was like a big deal to get into this high school. I remember the first week on Friday, I didn't have any homework, and I felt horrible about myself. I was like, why don't I have any homework? Like, I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just waiting for them to be like, just kidding, you missed 4 tests. Like, and so it's like weird. I have this like thing that it's like, I should be preparing extra. I should be saying, I was like, maybe you could just take it easy.
Yeah.
You know? So like today there was some stuff that I could have done, but I could also do it tomorrow.
Right.
So I'm going to do it tomorrow instead.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, maybe I need to, you know, have some kombucha and do some coloring books.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
I feel like recovery is very important. You know,
Yes.
we're both very physically active as well, but we also need those days to where like, you know what? I don't think I should work out today because this is what my body is telling me.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I imagine it's the same with your brain and your emotional buildup.
Oh, it absolutely is. And the more that you try to push through it, the worse the buildup's going to be. So, yeah, I was like doing a meditation that was on acknowledging and releasing grief, and like 2 minutes into the 7-minute meditation, I'm like,
yeah. And also, not to cut you off, but also my realization in like this immediate moment is that I don't think it's one stage of grief that we're going through with all of this.
Waves.
I feel like it's waves of grief, and the first wave or the first sort of phase of grief and loss is anger. That is the first sort of goalpost you jump over. And so everything that you're feeling, and I imagine millions of others people are feeling,
for sure,
is perfectly natural.
And too,
because
it's
you're a
like,
human being with feelings.
Recovery is not linear.
No,
healing is not linear.
Emotions are not
grief
linear.
is not linear. Like, and also too,
life
we
is
can
not
go
linear.
through it again, because you can have grief for the life that you had. You can have grief for what's happening with the pandemic. You can have grief for what's happening for Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Like, you could have grief over so many things right now.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon to think of it as multiple waves of grief, multiple kinds of grief, and that's compounded with this new world that we're living in.
Yeah.
So it's like, please, for God's sake, take care of yourselves. Download, and I have plenty of apps I can recommend. Just message me on Instagram and I will tell you all of the wellness apps. How are you doing?
Well, I know you have OCD.
I do have OCD.
But I have JoCD. Because...
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
That was...
The reason I say that is because I'm wearing my Joe Biden 2020 t-shirt. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it.
Why didn't you say if you're listening on the podcast, I'm wearing it, versus if you're watching on...
Wait, what did I just say?
You said if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a shirt, you could see it. It's like, well, yeah.
This is a visual medium.
This is a visual medium. I don't think you need to tell them that they can see your shirt.
Yeah, all right.
Right.
I'm explaining for the people watching our podcast.
Right.
Wait, that doesn't quite measure.
I'll do sign language just to really capitalize on it.
Impaired, right?
Yes, Ben is wearing I'll do sign language for the hearing impaired. No problem.
Right.
That's what you just said. Did you?
I've been holding. Wait, for the hearing. The hearing impaired needs sign language.
Yeah, I thought.
Right.
Wait. I thought you were saying. I thought now I ruined it all. Now I look like the asshole. Yeah, for the visually impaired.
Good thing we have this all on video and on podcast. So we can go
everybody
back and
can just come for us. Like, there's footage, and it's so clear that we mean everything we're talking about.
Word. But I'm wearing my Joe Biden t-shirt.
That is serious.
Which is why I made that joke.
Yes.
So,
go Joe.
Yeah, go Joe. I've had mixed reactions around the community.
Yes, you have.
I went out running, because I have 2 of these t-shirts. I went out running in my other one today. And you can always tell who is supporting Joe Biden because I'm running on the side of a road / highway. And there are people who give you a lot of room to run, and then there are people who just like are within 2 feet of you who just don't give a shit.
Don't give a
And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then like people are waving at you, giving you all this space. I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
And then people in the supermarket are like, go Joe. I'm like, yeah, go Joe.
Right, but then there's also like grumpy.
There's guy with Trump hat who's not wearing a mask.
I loved you said that his expression when he saw your shirt, he didn't know what to do with himself.
Yes,
like
there was a guy in the store.
So little visibility
he was wearing
around
a MAGA hat. He's wearing a MAGA hat, and again, like he can, if he wants to wear his MAGA hat and vote for Trump, That's his prerogative. But we can also coexist in the same space. But I did think it was interesting to see, like, as soon as I walked towards him, he saw me coming, and he froze for a second.
Like he looked
it was like a shark coming at him in water.
Well, I thought it was more like he saw an ex-girlfriend and he didn't from high school.
Yeah,
like
okay.
didn't
So
want
maybe
him
not
to
shark in water, but sort of like an awkward situation coming his way.
Right.
So he just decided to like turn all the way around
Mm-hmm.
and talk to the deli lady who was there about cold cuts while I was, looking at salsa.
Sure.
So anyhow, it's interesting the reactions you get, but I am very much in a phase of showing and living what you believe. I'm very glad that we're able to.
I'm setting up the live Insta.
I thought
I
thought you were TikToking for a second.
No, I don't have a TikTok.
I'm not knocking over.
Should I get a TikTok?
Don't get a TikTok. Amazon today they told employees to delete the app on their phones because they thought the Chinese were using it to hack. And then they like retracted that. They were like 6 hours later, like, oh, never mind. I don't know why.
What?
Because TikTok is now huge and it's making like this big impact on social media.
No,
and people are making
literally
making millions of dollars off
So
of
here's the thing. This is the thing. All right. Okay. It's because, in my opinion, I think it's because Trump's pissed off that a bunch of TikTokers ruined his rally. So now he's claiming that this is like how people are hacking into whatever and that it's illegal or whatever.
Right.
When actually it's just he's pissed off that a bunch of TikTokers like
Fucking
rickrolled his shit. I think that's what it is. Security concerns from a China-owned company. Thank you, Stafford.
Thank you, Stafford. No, I saw that in the New York Times today, and
Stafford's like our fact checker.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I don't know what we would do with that.
Truly, though. Also Gen Z trolls LMAO.
They are, but they're making like millions of dollars. There's like these TikTok communities who live in houses, and they're all like in their late teens and early 20s, and they all look like Gap models.
Yes,
and they're making all of this money and selling all this stuff through ad deals that they must get, just like any YouTuber. But anyway,
well, we talk like we really know what we're talking about.
We do as mid-30s who don't have TikTok,
married people.
That's right.
Jesus Christ.
So, but anyway, to answer your question, I'm doing well.
Good.
Very busy day.
12 minutes in.
I took 2 trips to the dump today.
Not the toilet.
Not the toilet, but the actual dump here in Sunapee, New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
I helped my aunt clean out the garage
she's
last week.
She's not your aunt.
I mean, she's my aunt-in-law.
People
think she's more my aunt than yours until they meet you.
That's because you have red hair.
Right. The guy at the dump today was like, oh, yeah, you must be related to Elizabeth because you got red hair. I'm like, no. My wife is her niece, but if you met my wife, you would know that my wife is related to Elizabeth.
All right.
Because she's a Heffernan, and you can just tell when you're in the presence of a Heffernan.
I mean, it's true.
It's true. I'm
not. He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
So,
but that said, though, he laughed hysterically at that.
He did. The guy was like, "Oh!"
That's like here's the thing. That's the other thing too. Is that the guy when you picked up the paint that was the funniest thing.
When I went to the hardware store, I was picking up a can of Benjamin Moore paint, and I had to like give him my name to like pick up the order and everything. I had to show him my ID. And on my way out, what froze me in my steps, I was caught utterly flat-footed and I had no reaction because the reaction that was going to come out of my mouth was going to be very rude.
Of course.
Not like in a cutting way, but it would have insulted his intelligence just because that would have just been like my knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
Because on my way out with this can of paint, he was like, oh, it's so funny. You're buying a can of Benjamin Moore paint and your name's Benjamin. That's funny. And this was my reaction. Like, like, so many responses were running through my head in the span of seconds. And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything because what's going to come out due to my improv training is probably not going to be kind. And they're perfectly nice.
Right.
But thanks to Abishon.
Speaking of being quick-witted.
Speaking of two people trying to make it work through crazy times.
There you go. That's way better than mine. Speaking of paint.
Speaking of apartheid.
Wait. What?
We watched Lethal Weapon 2, the sequel. The sequel to Lethal Weapon.
My friend Ian from B12 said, and he is right, much like The Godfather, the second is better than the first.
I think I mentioned that to you as well.
Yes.
Like the first movie, which we have reviewed on this podcast. You should go back and listen to that. I also recommend that you do watch the first one before you watch this one. You don't necessarily need to.
It helps.
But it helps give a little bit of backstory about the two main characters.
This one is infinitely better.
It is infinitely better.
But you can't really watch it without watching the first one.
Correct. And we'll get into all of that. So the plot breakdown per IMDb. Riggs and Murtaugh are on the trail of South African diplomats who are using their immunity to engage in criminal activities in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Yeah. Sales shoe.
Sales shoe. Could you get me a G&T on shoe? Directed by the amazing Richard Donner. And for you who don't know, he also directed a little movie called The Goonies. But he also directed all 4 Lethal Weapon movies. He directed a great movie called Maverick.
I haven't seen that.
Has worked with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover constantly.
Is Maverick a spinoff of Top Gun?
No, that is Top Gun Part 2. Maverick Takes Manhattan, which is coming out.
Is that with the Muppets?
Year. I really wish they would do a Top Gun movie with Muppets.
That would be so
Muppets
great.
And Jets? Can you imagine?
There would be at least one time that the thing would pop off and just
Gonzo
will fly out. No!
We could get Tim Curry and Michael Caine in there.
No, I don't know about.
I
don't know about either of them. I was about to say I don't know about Tim Curry, but I'm like, actually, I don't know about Michael Caine.
Smoking cigars and drinking brandy.
Right.
Directed by Richard Donner, screenplay by a guy named Jeffrey Boehm. The story was originally by Shane Black, who also, I believe, came up with the original concept for Die Hard.
Oh.
Shane Black and Joel Silver, who's the producer of this movie, made all of these amazing action movies, including Die Hard, including the first 2 Lethal Weapon movies. So if it was the 80s and it was action, chances are Shane Black and Joel Silver, one of the two, if not both, were involved in these movies. This movie got an Oscar nomination for best sound effects editing and best effects.
Okay, I'm right with that.
So 2 nominations. Holds, I believe, a 70 Metascore on IMDb based on the reviews of 21 different critics. Came out in 1989. Jesus. Made $147 million just U.S. domestically, which I think is twice the domestic money that Lethal Weapon made.
Really?
So it's a sequel that the critics were like, it's as good, if not better than the first.
Yep.
They really took the script and just kind of honed in on the comedic elements.
Yes.
But also a pretty good plot that had a lot of things to say that were going on socially at the time.
Right.
And also, again, just took what they had as their base and just built on it.
Well, and it's like a lot of other movies that we've talked about where they weren't quite sure what their audience was going to be.
Sure.
If it's going to be like adults, if it's going to be families, if it's going to be kids.
Plus, this is released in, we just said July 7th of 89. So,
right, so
I was 5 years old. It was a summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
So they wanted it to cater to the widest audience as possible.
Right.
And the poster, if you guys look up the poster, it's super simple, just like all the Lethal Weapon posters. It's just Gibson and Glover on the cover.
I have a comment about that a bit later on.
I think you told me about this.
I did.
And I think I know what you're going to say.
Yes, you will.
I think I have a way to shut you down.
Great. We'll do it in trivia then.
Great.
We'll do it in trivia.
Great.
But like what I was saying though is that it's like a lot of those movies, the first one where they're figuring out, this is our audience.
Yeah.
Then once they have that figured out, the ones afterwards usually are an improvement upon because they know who they're catering to.
Sure.
And they know what they're writing for.
And they also do test audiences as well.
Yeah.
And I imagine they took that feedback from the first movie and took that all into consideration. And getting into the cast a little bit, of course, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover return as Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh.
Mm-hmm.
The addition of Joe Pesci as Leo Getz is one of the most brilliant strokes of genius to ever come out of the 1980s.
Joe Pesci will outshine anyone.
Put Joe Pesci in any movie.
Any movie. Any actor. I don't care.
I think,
if you put him on the screen with Tom Cruise, Sean Connery, and fucking Michael Caine, you would still have your eye drawn to Joe Pesci every time.
He just adds so much. I don't think he tries to steal the spotlight.
No.
he's such a great ensemble player.
Yes.
And if you want a good review of a Joe Pesci movie we did recently, go back and listen to My Cousin Vinny.
You can also go back before that and listen to Raging Bull, which is an incredible movie, one of our earliest ones.
I almost said The Godfathers, but Joe Pesci's not The Godfathers.
Not in The Godfathers.
Rounding out the supporting cast, new to the movie, Patsy Kensit plays Rika von Haagen-Dazs, who that's what Mel Gibson calls her.
Haagen-Dazs?
Yes, Rika von Haagen-Dazs.
Oh my God.
But Rika von Dazs, who plays his girlfriend. We have Joss Ackland, who's still alive, who plays the main bad guy, Arjun Rudd. Derek O'Connor plays his sort of henchman, Peter Vorsit. We have returning cast of Darlene Love, who plays Trish Murtaugh. All of these supporting members, though, you have Jeanette Goldstein, who movie buffs might remember from James Cameron's Aliens. She also played John Connor's foster mom in Terminator 2. She had a ton of work during.
Wait, who was she in this?
She just played one of the detectives.
Cops?
Yeah.
Oh, right. She's the one that got the pool.
The pool bomb, which was one of the greatest stunt explosions in the movie.
The one policewoman they have, and they literally blew her out of the water. It was supposed to
be a lot more graphic in the original screenplay, but they took and just rewrote a little bit. Also rounding out the supporting cast, we have Dean Norris, who plays Hank in the entire season of Breaking Bad. You'll spot Dean Norris in a ton of movies. Dean Norris, oddly enough, was in Terminator 2 as well. He was on the SWAT team that went and tried to take them down.
Yeah, a cop, you're going to play a cop.
Yeah, exactly. So an amazing supporting cast. So
side note, why did the psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever show up 3 times and then really have nothing to do? She seemed like she's important, and then nothing happened.
I think she has a little bit more of a heavy role in the first one because she's telling everyone that Riggs is kind of unhinged. He's got all these psychological issues that he really needs to work through.
Well, maybe. I guess I personally thought, I was like, oh, is there actually a completely inappropriate love interest there? It's
in Lethal Weapon 4, they actually reference that a little bit, but he's making fun of her because, and not to spoil it, and maybe we can watch Lethal Weapon 4 at some point, but Riggs is thinking of actually getting married again. Mm-hmm. And if we watch Lethal Weapon 3, we'll find out why. But he goes to the psychiatrist, and honest to God, he's going to her for advice. He's like, what do you think about marriage? And she's like, and she laughs in his face because, oh my God, the M word. She's like, you know what would happen? We would go into my office, we would sit down, and then you would tell me you want to marry Murtaugh or the president or whoever. And she's like, something just to get under my skin, something to get a rise out of me. I don't like you. And then she storms off, and then Gibson from across the room is in front of hundreds of people. He's like, Stephanie, I'm so sorry. We can't go out. I'm in a committed relationship right now. And everyone's like, oh, what the fuck? And he just totally embarrasses her in front of everyone.
God.
She's like, you're disgusting. How dare you? And so she ends up becoming kind of this weird punching bag, but she's always sort of this minute voice of reason.
I don't love that.
Riggs is Riggs.
If you were going to say it was the 80s.
Yeah. There was cocaine flying around every set,
So then we get to abuse the female psychologist?
Abuse the female psychologist.
We verbally abuse the female psychologist.
Riggs just brushes her off because he feels like he doesn't need her. He's dislocating his arm to work through his...
So there's no way the camper would have exploded. Let's just dive right in because I'm furious.
So we actually kick off the movie in one of the best openings ever.
A really good opening.
It really is.
It really is.
They show the title crawl. It's just Lethal Weapon 2, and then right away you hear Mel Gibson screaming because it's like he's on a roller coaster, but they're in a high-speed pursuit. They're chasing after this vehicle. There's all these different squad
Keep in mind
cars.
that they're doing it in. Why are they in his wife's car?
Because of course he gets caught. I don't know. I bet he went to the dealership to pick it up.
And then they got called in.
They're in Murtaugh's wife's brand new station wagon. It looks like the Griswolds are chasing these South African terrorists through Los Angeles. And so Murtaugh is driving. He's trying not to scratch the car because it's brand new. And Riggs is like, hey, you go any faster? And he's like, this is my fucking wife's new car. I can't wreck this. So right away, you establish that dynamic of the wild boy in the passenger seat, punching the roof because he's having so much fun. And Murtaugh's just trying to just keep the car on the road while pursuing them safely. So right away, you set up a dynamic, but you're also... What I love is that you're just dropped in to an existing situation. Yeah. But also right away you get the sense of history. Time has passed. Oh yeah. But these guys are still who they are. But you can tell they're a little bit closer. Yeah. So they really lean into the comic sort of
Yes.
dynamic of these two.
Which I think that's what makes this so successful.
Yes.
And I think, but again, you wouldn't be able to have that if you hadn't have had the first movie.
Correct.
Where they're
Correct.
like figuring each other out. Because you need that.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about, I mean, if you could find something that would match perfectly, it'd be Bilbo Baggins and Sam. I mean, it's the same fucking thing. So there's this high
High-speed pursuit.
speed pursuit.
So
Wow.
you have different squad cars. There's 2 different cars they're following.
And they're going after this guy. I don't remember why they're going after him, but they're chasing him.
Yes.
And then they catch. No, they don't catch one. They both effectively get away.
Essentially. The car
without
gets destroyed.
ruining, right? Without, oh my god!
It gets shot. It gets taken up on a ramp and scratched.
Throughout the entire movie, that's like a whole bit. Is like, how much can we put this car
and
through?
It's actually through the like Lethal 3 and 4. Like something always happens to
his
Roger's
car?
shit because Riggs is involved somehow.
right.
Riggs they actually end up crashing the car at some point. Riggs jumps out of the car through the
I
windshield.
loved this.
And starts chasing after the car on foot
I
because he's just so
loved that.
jazzed
Amped up.
just to
I love
get
that
these
he
guys.
jumps on the car that they're pursuing and is like, "Can I have your license and registration?"
registration proof of insurance. Then he rolls off the end of the car.
Oh my god!
And
It was
Murtaugh's
so
like, get in
great.
the fucking car, dude. What are you doing? Like,
Right.
get in. He's like going 50 miles an hour. You can't
No.
catch him.
So then what happened is that let's see here. Ren's after ruining his wife's car. Oh, okay. So they get away. They aren't able to catch the guy that they were chasing.
Right. But they find
doubloons.
They find Krugerrands in the trunk.
Krugerrands. I've never heard that
which
term before.
is the currency of South Africa. And I
Gold
believe
coins.
it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the actual currency of the white minorities who were in power in South Africa at the time.
Oh.
This is the regime that like jailed Nelson Mandela. Like a lot of big stuff is going on like racially in South Africa.
Right.
Basically the minority has put in segregation as law.
Okay.
So which is called apartheid, and there was all this. Of course, it was completely fucked and wrong. This political party established itself, interestingly enough, in 1948, just after the Nazis lost the Second World War. And so they reestablished themselves somehow in South Africa, and they thought that would be cool,
right?
Or they thought that would be okay and last. But anyway,
so
they find all of this money belonging to the white minority regime, in South Africa.
So then cut to the police station where Riggs is trying to get out of a straitjacket.
Right.
And they're all betting on if he can or can't.
Mm-hmm.
And then he dislocates his shoulder, gets himself out at the last second, and then relocates it.
Yeah. Which comes up, I think, if not in Lethal 3, definitely in Lethal 4.
It came up at least once in this. At least once.
Twice, actually.
Was it twice? That's what I thought.
Because he gets in a straitjacket 2 times in this movie.
That's right.
At the beginning.
Is there a third time, though?
No, I think it's just twice.
Just twice, okay.
It's just twice.
And
that's the scene where the psychiatrist like comes over and he just got himself out of the straitjacket.
Oh my god!
He slams his arm against a wall to put the shoulder back in place, and he's just laughing his ass off.
And she's like, "Why do you do this to yourself?" He's like, "Well, no one else will let me do it to them."
Plus, I need the money,
Right? Like
he's like,
pay up. He's a smart ass.
He's a smart ass, but he's also fine.
And then they reveal too that Murtaugh, his daughter, is going to be in a commercial.
Oh my god!
And everybody in the station should watch. And he's like, "Oh my god, my daughter better not suck." Which also like, come on, have some faith in your daughter.
Yeah.
Like, she's gonna be fine.
But he's also surrounded by ball-busting cops.
Right.
Who are like, if your daughter sucks.
Which also, I'm sorry,
throughout
the movie, there were so many times that people were like, "Oh my god, he was almost murdered. Hey, did you want to go to the poker game? Do you want to ride? We can car share." Like, they would have something really horrible happen, and then they're like, anyways, so when I play beer pong, these are the rules I follow.
So in sequence, we go back to the Murtaughs. We watch this commercial. The commercial ends up being about condoms. And Roger freaks the fuck out. He's like, I didn't know that you run a condom commercial.
Wait, before that, though, I don't understand. Why did his family freak out about him eating tuna?
I think during the 80s, the late 80s, there was like this big movement to like boycott tuna because they trapped so many dolphins in the nets.
Right.
That
so they
there
just
was an actual,
threw that in?
Yeah. Like, and I think that ties in. And tuna does not tie in with apartheid, but they took current socio-political matters that were going on at the time and they
just
put them
shoved
in the
him
movie.
in?
Right, which I really appreciate it. It's almost a little bit like a time capsule.
Is this actually where Too Much Tuna started?
I hope it's where
this is where Too Much. Nick Kroll, we know you're listening and watching.
But also white supremacists in power.
Call up John Mulaney. Tell him to pull up his doohickey computer.
Right.
And watch us, because we're talking about the birth of Too Much Tuna.
Right. Separate from Too Much Tuna is white supremacists in power, i.e. Stephen Miller being in the White House right now helping write Donald Trump's speeches. So time is a circle.
Time is a circle.
And Stephen Miller, your time is coming to an end in the White House.
And then they're making a hobby room. Okay. Okay, so then we cut back to the bad guys.
The bad guys, right. So the guy who got away from the car chase goes back to the South African
I'm
consulate.
sorry, things went wrong.
Things went wrong, Mr. Rad.
No, it's not. They're not Australian.
No, but they're South African. And he says, sorry, Mr. Rad, things went south.
There were like four different accents happening. There wasn't any.
Because the guy who gets shot is like he plays an Irish guy in The Departed. He voices Deathstroke in the Batman video games.
It was. There were so many times that I'm like, I don't know where any of you are from. I don't know where you're from. Right. It was so. Anyways, so they're like, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And then they kill him.
They shoot him in the head.
Because that's
they wrap him up in painter's plastic and dispose of the body.
Right.
And they're like, the police are getting hot on our tails.
Can I fast forward really quickly to the part when they shoot his fish tank?
Oh, right.
And all the fish come spilling out. And my favorite line in the whole movie, he's like, pick them up with your hands.
Pick them up with your hands.
Like, I was like, what?
That's actually one of my favorite things in the whole movie.
Pick them up with your hands.
So we established kind of who the bad guys are. They're super shady. They're clearly from South Africa. So we get a little bit of glimpse of who they are and how ruthless they are. The commercial at Murtaugh's house does not go over well. He sends all the kids to bed. He sends Rian's boyfriend home. The carpenter for the rec room that they're building is for some reason in the living room watching this commercial with them, which I thought was really funny.
That was so great. Nice little add-on.
That actor's name is Jack McGee, who was in Rescue Me and a ton of different movies.
Oh, that's right.
He improv the line where he was like, I thought she was great. She made me want to buy rubbers right now.
That's awesome.
And they thought it was so fucking funny. They just left it in the movie.
I love that
shit. It was really good. So, of course, all the cops are busting Murtaugh's balls about, your daughter was in a condom commercial.
But let's not forget that after this,
that night,
there is a threat on his life.
Yes.
They basically say, they put duct tape across his face and they're all wearing hoods.
These South African terrorists go into Murtaugh's house and gag them, and they say,
what was the word?
Don't
be a
it's
mean Keppa?
I thought it was.
Don't be a good Keppa.
Keffer?
I'm
looking it up right now.
I thought it was copper, and I was like you're don't be a good cop.
No, it's let's see, Urban Dictionary.
Because I was that's a weird thing.
A racist Afrikaans term for black people, the South African word for the N-word.
Oh, okay.
Used mostly by the country's right-wing white population, made especially popular, quote unquote, in the movie Lethal Weapon 2. They make a little joke about it at the end of the movie.
They do.
But yeah, it's basically a word that they used in the movie to not say the N-word, which I thought was really
creative.
It was creative.
Yeah.
It was effective. When they said it, you know what it meant.
I mean, I didn't. I was like, did he say Keppa? Like
a fish?
Don't be a dirty cop. Don't be a dirty Keppe. I was like, what? Because I didn't know what his accent was.
This was the South African
word
for the N-word. So
okay.
it kind of, again.
So they're taken off of the case. They're like, all right, you guys need to stop. So you're going to go take care of this guy who's in house arrest. Just keep an eye on him because there are people trying to murder him.
Right.
So people are trying to murder you. So let's keep you safe by going to protect somebody who's trying to be murdered.
So they're not happy because it's like a shit assignment. They basically have to watch over this guy who's turned state's witness.
Oh, hi, Joe Pesci.
And we get introduced to Leo Getz, who is now in every other Lethal movie heading forward.
He's amazing.
In this one especially, he's awesome in this movie. The addition of Joe Pesci just to sort of ping pong between Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yeah.
And Riggs and Murtaugh again, get themselves into a whirlwind of shit. The waiter who shows up to the room with room service tries to murder Leo.
Yep.
Because Leo
and they fall
was the
out
accountant.
Of a 7-story window into a pool.
Right. And Leo was the accountant smuggling the South Africans' drug
Right,
money,
but they don't realize that it's the South African.
They don't know
They have
this yet. They
no
haven't put
clue
this
that,
together
that
yet.
that's the
And
same
of course,
person.
Riggs tackles the guy. They end up riding the food cart out the window down into the swimming
Which
pool.
I have to say, Joe Pesci, his character Leo Getz' explanation of money laundering is the first time I've actually understood it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Like the next scene after they're all like Joe Pesci, where they say, Leo Getz, what the fuck did you do that these guys are trying to kill you? And he's like, I laundered all this money for him and blah, blah, blah. So they go back to Murtaugh's house. They're all wet. They're drying their clothes. They're eating food. And Leo explains what money laundering is.
Right.
And it's actually really
it's a great way of explaining it.
Right.
What happens next? Then, oh, fuck. No, Leo remembering, Joe Pesci knocked him out the window. Oh my God. Okay. Leo remembering numbers is how I work. Oh, because they're trying to figure out where the South African people are.
Right. They're trying to find their base, essentially.
Right. And so he is like, okay, yeah, I went to it this one time. It's a house on stilts.
Right.
We can go back to it.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, it's number 9 because I was born on the 9th month, the 9th day of the 99th year or whatever it was, 99th year.
Right.
I haven't been born yet.
He was born in September on September 9th.
Right. And so then like him going through that's how I memorize lines.
Which
like
is insane.
It's the stuff that I write down, but it works. I memorized a 2-page monologue within 24 hours. So come at me.
So they end up finding this place, luckily, on like the 7th try. These guys are in there like counting money. And of course they get themselves into another fucking haywire situation where they're taken off down the highway.
Yep.
The guy escapes in a tow truck, so they're pursuing,
that's right.
and they're already taking Leo on this pursuit, which is not allowed.
Nope.
And so Leo's like trying to help him where he can. Riggs is like on top of the tow truck trying to get this guy.
The logistics around that stunt,
yes.
I think that's probably one of the most impressive stunts I have seen.
So the tow truck crashes into a car. The station wagon crashes into the back of the tow truck, which sends a car flying out of the tow truck in front down the highway. That car, which has a surfboard on top, hits that car. The surfboard flies forward into the tow truck and decapitates the South African terrorist. It's a really great sequence.
If I had a nickel,
I'm just like,
it was so well done.
No CGI.
So well done.
None of that shit existed really.
Oh,
it was just all practical and stuntmen, and it probably took weeks to plan.
So then they go back and they're like, okay, these guys are like the actual assholes. Like we have every right to go back and arrest them. They go back, but it turns out they're diplomats
from South Africa. They can't be prosecuted. They can't be arrested. They can't even give them a parking ticket.
Made me think of American Dad, if anyone's seen that.
That episode where they're stealing.
I've got diplomatic plates. You can't touch me now. Oh my God.
So they're all pissed off because they can't touch these guys, even though they know that they're dirty.
Right.
On the way out, Riggs runs into Patsy Kensit for the first time.
I thought you were going to say Patsy Cline.
Patsy Cline. Always Patsy Cline. He runs into Patsy Kensit, Rika von Hagendas on the way out. They have a clear love connection. They end up seeing each other later. So they're trying to find creative ways to get to these guys.
Right. I so badly, as Riggs is following him around, like throughout the city, stalking him quietly, like I so badly wanted Hall & Oates' Private Eyes to play. I wanted that so badly. Private Eyes.
The rights would have cost
for watching you. That would have been too much. So great.
So they find creative ways to not only follow these guys, but to more or less see what they're up to. Their master plan was to sneak into the consulate. Roger goes in as a distraction.
Right.
But first he sends in Leo to be like, yeah, I have this friend who wants to go to South Africa.
But you have to talk him out of it.
You have to talk him out of it. And the guy's like, no. Like, bring him in.
South Africa's great.
And then Danny Glover walks in. And he's like, Alphonse. Like, that's Leo's name for Danny Glover's fake character. He's like, Alphonse, come on over. And the guy at the desk is like, oh, sir, you should not go to South Africa. Listen to your friend. And he's like, why shouldn't I go? And he's like, because you're black. And Joe Pesci's like, you are. He is. And of course, Murtaugh starts ripping into this guy about, like, I should join my oppressed brothers.
Right.
He actually just played Nelson Mandela like 2 years earlier in another
movie. That's great.
And he's like, free South Africa, you dumb son of a bitch.
And there's like all these protesters outside.
And apartheid, and it's really cool. So again, like the social commentary I thought was a really great thread into having villains from South Africa who were trying to establish a crime ring in
Yeah.
Los Angeles,
Yeah,
which I just thought was really clever.
It was a
and
great
very,
way of doing
and very
it.
topical. So Riggs is able to sneak into the back offices of the consulate. So he's able to sneak into the main room, steal some notes off the main guy's desk. And they all come in, but Riggs is just kind of waiting for these guys. Like, he just hides behind the door. He lets six of them in.
Yeah.
And he pulls his Beretta, and he's just
That's gun for people who don't know, like myself.
It's for the gun nerds out there. Just as a little side,
I don't know that there are too many gun nerds
the weapons.
that listen
I just want to specify this.
All right.
The weapons that they use are very specific and commentary on their character. Roger uses an old Smith & Wesson 6-shooter revolver.
Right. Joe Pesci even said something about that.
And
He's like, I didn't know they still made those.
Like a 3-inch Smith & Wesson. And Riggs uses an automatic 9mm Beretta. It's a fast gun. It's lethal. I think it's gas powered.
Most guns are lethal.
Well, yes. Riggs himself is a lethal
sorry,
weapon.
I had to say it.
I mean, it has a lot of bullets in it. So the guns that they have are very symbolic of the characters they play.
Yes.
Danny Glover's old school. Mel Gibson is like the automatic.
What would Joe Pesci's be? A potato gun?
It would be, what would Joe Pesci have?
A potato gun?
No, I imagine him with just a gun that's like 3 times as big.
Way bigger than
and it's just like shooting out of his hands, even though he's trying to help.
Like Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's exactly
giant
right.
thing that he has
So
to wear.
Riggs, in one of my favorite scenes, just like he's holding these guys up, and he's like, "I'll make you a deal. You and your master race, pack up your tents, get the fuck out of my country, and I'll leave you alone. Because if you don't, I'm gonna make your life a living hell. I'm gonna send you back home with your balls in a sling."
Right.
And they start ripping into him for being a friend of black people and all this kind of stuff. And he almost shoots the main guy. And again, in a moment where you can tell how far Riggs has come,
Yes.
and how much work he's done,
Yes.
he instead shoots the fish tank, which leads to your favorite line in the movie.
Grab them with your hands.
Grab them with your hands. And so Gibson leaves because message delivered. And he runs into Patsy Kensit.
He's like, "Hey, we should go let's go get some food."
And
she's
then
like, "Okay."
I think he stalks her to the grocery store.
Yes,
because
that's
he's a
right.
cop
and like
and-
throws onions on the ground and
Right.
is like, makes a scene so that she has to go.
But
with
in
him.
that scene, if you really listen, you can really hear Mel Gibson's accent.
Oh
come
my
out
God,
Because
throughout the
Patsy Kensit's
entire
accent
time.
comes out because I think she's British.
Yeah, something like that.
And he's Australian, and you really hear his accent sort of like come out a lot.
Oh, right, the whole time it'll just be like little peaks throughout. He'll be like, "Well, I think we should go out and get more fish," and I'm like,
More fish.
like it's like he talks normal and then little words pop up, and I'm like, "What is happening?"
So they end up going back to their place,
And then this is
hopping
when
up on the good foot and doing the bad thing.
this is when all of a sudden, like the South African people just go after the police.
Yes, they're like, fuck
They
this.
they
the
go
cops need to
after
pay.
and like blow up a house where there are a bunch of cops doing the poker party that was
Yeah.
referenced to earlier. Very nice. The only woman on the police force is going to
Not
do
the
a
police
couple,
force on this team.
Okay, a couple of laps
In the pool.
in the
before she goes to
pool,
work.
and she's about to jump in, and then the pool explodes.
And she has this great sort of flip into the pool where she's like full,
Which
like swan
She
dive.
should have survived.
I
by the
think
way,
maybe I don't know.
she
but
should
it was
have
a cool
survived.
stunt. So, like, their entire team
that was where
is
we had
wiped out.
Danger Sacks.
Yeah,
And then they
Danger
try
Sacks
to shoot Riggs and
and Patsy Kensit
do your Dawes.
and Rika von Hagen-Dazs.
do her Dawes, right? Titties,
So
titties,
yes,
all over the
we
place.
we got boobies. All over.
Yes.
I have a little bit of trivia about the sex.
The likelihood. Okay, so then now he gets really pissed off.
Yes. The helicopters come at his beach RV and just blow it to shit with
Right.
MP5 and machine
So then
guns.
they sneak away, and he's like, "Go home, like take care of yourself. I don't know what I'm gonna do." And she's like, "No, come with me. You can come live with me tonight, and the next night, and the night after that."
And then he's like, what about the night after that?
"What about the night after that?" And she's like, "Oh,
Don't push your luck.
don't push your luck." God bless.
Why are you hamming this up? It's
'Cause
she's really good in this movie.
She makes me so
Why?
furious.
Why?
Because she is helpless AF. She carries around papers.
Well,
She carries around papers
yeah.
and is helpless and powerless. She has nothing to do except for be like this, like,
When the weird old Nazi guy tries to come on to her, she's like, "Good night." Like, she just fucking walks away. You know?
I don't know. Again, I am always going to advocate for stronger female characters. I know this is the
it's
80s.
1989.
I know that.
We are not as far along as we are
I
now.
know, but I'm still going to comment on it to see how far along we have come.
Okay.
I didn't care for it. I wanted her to do something.
Okay.
Do something more.
She does something.
What?
She dies.
I know that. After all of that shit.
I know. So Riggs leaves
Fuck.
her house. They knock Riggs out. They kidnap him. We don't know what's happened, and we find out in the next scene
Yeah.
that the right-hand guy, this assassin who works for this regime,
I still don't
ends up
know
being the guy
how.
who killed his wife.
I felt like that was a bit of a reach.
It was a little bit of a reach.
It was a bit of a reach. That at that part, that was where it's like, okay, now we're just scrambling. We got to finish this movie up.
I don't
We
know
gotta
if
do
we
it.
necessarily needed it.
I don't think we did either.
Because maybe if it was revealed a little bit earlier in the movie, I don't know. I don't even know if it
I don't think
should
it was
have been a part
necessary
of
to
the
be in
story.
there. No,
Yeah.
I think the only reason why it was so that they could button up and get closure for
From
Riggs.
the first, yeah.
I think that's
We
why
actually,
they did
to
it.
go back a little bit, we actually had this really beautiful scene in Murtaugh's house where Gibson, Riggs, essentially, he essentially lives there. It's like a second home.
Yeah,
They
he's
have like
got,
a laundry
clothes
basket
there.
for him.
Yeah.
And he's in the kitchen, like making this big pot of chili. And Trish, Murtaugh's wife, finds this pen in the washing machine.
Which
And
that was the only time that gold pen showed up. We never came back to it.
And he's like, oh, yeah, that's mine. And she can tell that something's on his mind.
Right.
And he's like, actually, this is the pen that I found the night my wife was killed. And
Right.
he goes into this whole monologue while he's making
Very sweet.
It's really sweet
Yeah.
about like the night that his wife died. And
So then we find out
Anyway.
in this scene that the reason that his wife died in a car accident is because these guys were actually after him, saw her car and thought it was
thought
him,
it was him.
ran her off the road and killed her.
Killed her. So,
So-
Riggs essentially has blamed himself ever since.
Right. And so now he's
all
telling him,
Now
hey,
he's all pissed off.
I killed your wife.
And now I'm going to put you in a straitjacket and throw you into the LA River.
Does so. And then when he gets down there, he dislocates his shoulder, gets himself
Which we
out.
established earlier on in the movie.
Remember
that. Anyway,
and
continue.
then, oh no, look who's right there. It's the gal you just.
It's Rika von Hagendas, and she has been
She is
drowned.
dead.
Still wearing the Letterman's jacket.
That was really hard too.
Yeah.
The fact that she was still wearing his Letterman jacket.
Yeah, and
Like,
he's able to like
Oh.
he kills the two guys that were there, sort of
Oh
watching
my
over
god.
in very brutal fashion.
The part where though he takes her body to the beach,
Yeah.
which also I'm really glad Sam made an appearance, the dog.
Yeah,
Where
he's like
he's
walking
just
around,
walking around carrying
like,
her.
like this weird
Oh.
sort of Hamlet Ophelia moment. It's
Oh.
really heartbreaking. He's just like yelling into the
Like
night, just
that's another stage of
crying,
grief right
you know?
there.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that is some heavy fucking
And
shit.
he just goes into dark mode then.
Yeah.
Like he goes into vigilante,
he's seeing red.
yes,
They
like he
cannot
goes back
talk
to
him
like
out.
his sort of Vietnam special forces
Which
aspect
then-
where he's like, these guys need to die.
Then he calls Murtaugh and is like, hey, this guy killed my wife and then killed Haagen-Dazs.
And he
Like
killed all of our
he killed all of the people
All
that we
the-
love, so I'm
yeah,
going
police
after him. And
force.
he's like, no, don't go after him.
like we can't touch them because they're diplomats.
Right. And so then I don't know how. How did Murtaugh find him and like intervene?
So Gibson was going to the house on stilts,
Right.
and
So he
met
just
him
figured
there.
out where he might.
Well, no, they were talking on the CB radio.
oh. Right.
And he's like, this is where I'm going. You can meet me there. I've got a plan.
Mhm.
And so, as it turns out, previous to this, Leo gets Joe Pesci is captured. He is in the house on stilts being interrogated by them. And Gibson ties his car to the house on stilts
Now,
and
wait a-
pulls it down.
Now, wait a minute. So did Murtaugh basically say, oh, okay.
Essentially, like,
Like-
you saw him like take off his badge, put it in his
Oh,
desk
that's
drawer.
right. Okay,
because
so
he's
he's
like,
like,
tonight
all right,
I'm not a cop.
I'm
because,
not a cop.
yeah, these guys are diplomats, but they also killed a lot of my friends. And Riggs is my brother, and I would die for him.
I would like
This
to
is
say
a love story between two men.
This shit would not fly nowadays, but with
Of
everything
course
that,
it wouldn't.
here's the thing, of everything that we're learning about police behavior when they are not on duty, now I'm like,
Okay, this is excessive police behavior while not on duty. I
yeah,
will acknowledge that.
yes.
But he is also fighting Nazis.
Do you
so
know how
part of me is
expensive
like-
it is to put a house on stilts? That is expensive.
I-
So he pulls the stilts
he
out.
pulls the stilts.
How did
down.
they do that?
They actually did it.
Did they
They
really?
actually did it.
Is that can a truck actually do that?
I mean, if not, I don't know if like the Forerunner he had.
I was gonna
pulled the
say,
house
I don't
down.
know
I'm
if
sure
that-
it was something bigger.
So he got almost everybody.
So he pulls the house down. He knows that the assassin guy who killed his wife escaped.
Yes.
He knows that Arjun Rudd wasn't in there.
Right.
And earlier, Roger puts the pieces together and finds out that they're actually smuggling out all of their money on a boat.
Uh-huh.
So after they leave the house on stilts, we have to say goodbye to Leo Getz
right.
because they want him to go to safety.
Right.
These guys head to
because Leo Getz
docks.
was there being tortured.
Right. So they
Yes.
rescue Leo. He says, "Go back to the station. Turn the siren on. It's fine. Good luck. Hope to see you soon."
Mm-hmm.
So they go to the docks where this ship is being held. They find a way to get.
This is where shit was just like, let's go, let's
it
fucking
went
go,
bonkers,
go,
but
go,
it's
go.
good stuff. So they get into the shipping container. They end up like shooting all the money out into the ocean,
This
so
is
they're
where the
losing all their
ship
money.
hit the fan.
The ship hit the fan. This is where the ship hit the fan.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
So they end up throwing all of the South Africans' money into the ocean.
Oh, that's
There's a
right.
big action sequence that takes place. They end up taking out all of these guys on the boat.
And then Riggs meets the assassin guy.
Right.
And he's like, all right.
Yeah, before Riggs takes out this one guy with an entire magazine. And in his head, he's like saying all of the names of the cops who were murdered. He's saying Rika's name. He's saying his wife's name. That's why he's just boom, 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 like unloading into this guy.
Oh, I
And
didn't
he's-
catch that. I
You
just thought
didn't?
he
You
was
commented
losing.
on it.
I know. I thought he was losing it because he was just shooting somebody. I
but
didn't
you can
realize he
hear
was
him.
saying the names.
Yeah, you can hear the names being
I
said
didn't
in
catch
his
that.
mind. He's like, "This is
Christ
a
on
bullet for
sale.
every single person that you guys have killed.
Oh.
You are Nazis. They're Nazis. They need to die."
Yikes.
So we get down to the nitty gritty. It's just the assassin and the main guy who are left. The assassin finds Gibson, throws a knife in the back of his leg. There's this big fight that ensues. Gibson, of course, ends up getting the upper hand.
Right.
Doesn't quite kill the guy
No.
because
You can say
he finds out there's a better way to kill this guy than to just stab him with the knife that he stabbed me with. While this guy is on the ground, Riggs walks over to this hanging button, presses the button, and a big cargo container
How
just
would you know to do
falls on the
that?
I mean,
it's because movies are bullshit.
Because of movies. Because this
Also,
button
also,
does-
I can't remember how the nail gun came back in.
Oh, that's right. So
Because he's like nailed two.
yeah,
He like shoots,
nailed them both.
Nailed them both.
So to backtrack a little bit, when Murtaugh is at home,
Grown.
he's attacked by two of these Nazi assassins. And before we come across the contractor who's building the hobby room, and we establish the nail gun, he's using
Right.
it, and you can see it.
Right, and then
he
later on,
picks up the
he
nail
gets
gun when he's
attacked.
like getting choked by the guide. He like nails him right in the head. And
Literally.
then the other guy reaches through the plastic, and starts choking him. And he
his
grabs
house
it.
is
Boom, boom,
always
boom.
under construction.
Yes, his house is always getting fucked up. So Riggs kills the assassin,
Yep.
kills the guy who killed his wife and his girlfriend.
But he gets shot
a lot.
like 4 times
He
or
gets
something.
shot by this broom handle handgun
Yes.
that was made in China. I don't know why this South African has this Chinese-made gun, but that's beside the point.
Why? How do you know that?
I just know that. So he shoots Riggs with a lot.
I love that we just skirt right past that. I just know that.
It's a gun that shows up in a few video games.
Okay,
And
see,
it's a
there,
Chinese
there we
model.
go.
It's
All
called
right.
the broom handle.
Okay.
Anyway, so he shoots Riggs, and immediately he drops his gun. He's like, "I have diplomatic immunity. You cannot kill me." And then one of the greatest lines from action movies in the 1980s, Murtaugh does his little neck turn before he fires a bullseye into this guy's head, and he says, "It's just been revoked."
I can't. I
This
can't.
is Lethal Weapon.
I
This
know.
is-
It was just, it
this
was
is pun for the
so
whole
much.
family.
It was so,
It
so
was how else would you end
much.
it? So
I don't know, but it was so
you
much.
end the movie with this
And
really
wouldn't they
sweet.
get
Oh my god!
disbanded
We
from-
completely
Wouldn't they completely get disbanded from the police force for all of this
we
shit?
completely forgot to talk about my favorite scene in the movie.
What's your favorite scene in the movie,
The
Ben?
toilet bomb scene.
Oh my
How
god!
did we graze over that?
We did, because there was a second attempt on
Right,
Murtaugh's
Murtaugh's
life
always getting.
where he's sitting on
We
the
have to talk about the scene very quickly.
We're okay.
It's
we
the best
really
scene in the
quickly-
movie.
Hang on. I'm going
knew-
to time you. You have 1 minute. I love it when we do this.
Okay, so I have 1 minute to
You have
explain
1
the
minute
toilet
to
bomb
explain
scene.
the toilet bomb, and go.
So no one's heard from Murtaugh for like a day and a half, not a day and a half, like maybe 18 hours. So Riggs heads over to his house. He's up in the bathroom on the toilet because they have strapped C4 to the shitter. And if he gets up, he's going to end up on the moon. So Riggs is like, shit, I have to call this in. I'll get the bomb squad. And Murtaugh's like, hey, could you keep it quiet? Call it on the private channel. He's like, yeah, no problem. And then immediately we cut to the brilliant editing and direction of Richard Donner. We cut to hundreds of people on the street, the fire department, the cops, bomb squad. So everyone gets out of the bathroom. It's just Riggs and Murtaugh. They're going to jump into this tub, but they have to do it on 3. But there's this really touching moment where Murtaugh is trying to tell him that I love you just in case this goes south. And it's like
10
there's
seconds.
so much history. And then he's like, we're not going to fucking die here. They jump into the tub, pull the blanket down. The toilet shoots out the window, lands on the station wagon, and they live.
Nice! Perfect!
It is, honest to God, it's like a 15-minute sequence in the movie. It is so perfectly acted, written, shot. It is, and I will say this for Richard Donner, he is a master of coverage. You know where everyone is in proportion to everything, and it is just,
to wrap up
perfection.
the movie, he doesn't die.
Right.
He lives.
We have this beautiful scene where
we have
Murtaugh
sad
is holding
sax
him.
with knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door playing, which I was like, this is so heavy-handed. I think the television's gonna fall off.
Right.
Like it was so.
You didn't know if he was gonna live or not.
No, I know, but I was like, okay, all right. If we're gonna do, we got to pick one. Either knocking on heaven's door or the sad sax. You can't have
so
both.
Riggs and Murtaugh live to find another day.
That's Lethal Weapon
That's
2.
Lethal Weapon 2. Should we hop into some trivia?
Yeah, let's do it.
Recommendations. All right, let's cue that trivia music.
56.
I know.
Jesus.
It's such a good movie. During production, Richard Donner was shocked to learn that Mel Gibson was drinking 5 pints of beer for breakfast. Despite his alcohol problems, Gibson was known for his professionalism and punctuality and knowing all of his lines. The absolute professional, but Mel Gibson was a severe alcoholic.
That is what we call a functioning alcoholic.
Yes.
Where you would not know.
Jack McGee, who played the carpenter, ad-libbed the line about the condom commercial. The casting crew liked it so much that they kept it in.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where Mel Gibson attaches the cables to the house on stilts and pulls it down cost how much money?
$1 million?
$500,000.
$500,000.
A $500,000 sequence
Jeez.
where they actually pulled down the entire house on stilts. It's really impressive.
To
see this entire house come
and
down.
as it's happening, I was like, that's
in the
real.
valley. Yeah,
that's
it's
a real thing.
house. Like that actually happened.
It's crazy.
Leo Getz, who says, okay. That shtick was based on. It was based on Joe Pesci's idea. It was based on actual Disneyland employees when they're giving directions to guests. And he took that from his own life because Leo was going to be like this oily, effeminate character, but Pesci didn't want to do that. He pitched the idea of making him all too eager to please, complete with the okay, and ad-libs. And Richard Donner laughed and said, just do that. And so
oh my God.
the phrase is actually referred to in Home Alone, which came out the next year.
That's right.
By having the phrase "OK Plumbing" painted on the side of the Wet Bandits
Is
van.
that really a nod to it, or was that just because it was there?
I mean, it would be pretty like.
I don't.
It would be pretty coincidental if that happened.
Yeah.
I feel like that was.
All right.
The bomb on the toilet scene was used as an early teaser for the trailer for the movie. The trailer ended up with the toilet landing on Murtaugh's car, and the voiceover announcer saying, "They're not taking any more crap." Swear to God.
We can't do that anymore.
No, we can't. During the scene where Martin Riggs is talking about his gold pen and is making what is presumably a pot of chili, he can be seen crushing Oreo cookies into the pot, and later in the movie, Riggs asks Rika if he likes her chili with or without crushed Oreos.
I had no clue.
There's so much great references in the movie. They establish so much within the first 20 minutes, and then they recall so much later on.
Right.
So if you're really watching and paying attention, you can really appreciate these moments.
Huh.
But I did not catch that on the first time I watched
Nope.
it. No. Patsy Kensit described her sex scene with Mel Gibson as having been very uncomfortable to act out. She stated that the reason was that she and Gibson were both married and both very heavily Catholic, so it was a little bit awkward.
Oh.
In the original screenplay, Riggs was actually supposed to die. The script was much darker and much more violent.
Really?
And Donner took the script and took most of Shane Black's writing and kind of reworked it. They didn't, I don't know if they fired Shane Black, but they're like, we're going to buy your screenplay.
Right.
And then we're going to repurpose the story how we want to see fit, because they didn't want to do like psychotic Martin Riggs throughout the whole movie, because they kind of did that in the first one.
Right.
They wanted to see this guy take a journey, see how far he's come. He's now a part of a family.
Right.
Like you can see that, you know, in his history with Murtaugh. So they took a lot of that script and they just tinctured the heck out of it.
Interesting.
So, despite the film's anti-South African stance, it was passed uncut by the South African censors.
Really?
And became a major financial success in that
country.
So,
make people aware of their mistakes.
Yeah. And on the side of Riggs's refrigerator, you can see a U.S. Army Military Police School diploma.
Are we going to talk about the poster?
Oh, the poster?
The poster?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay,
that's
one of the
trivia.
alternative posters that was going to be used for this movie has a giant image of Mel Gibson being like, ah! And then Danny Glover's down in the corner and he's like, huh? It was so obvious that it's like Mel Gibson and Danny Glover in Lethal Weapons. It's like, this is a buddy cop movie. They are equals. There is so much in this movie about them being in it together in so many different ways that it makes me so surprised that even got to the point where it was considered and or released as a movie poster.
I am not saying that it was the smartest poster ever, but as I mentioned to you yesterday,
I know
Mel Gibson was a rising major star.
Right.
Not to say Danny Glover had not done a good amount of substantial good work at the time.
Right.
But for whatever reason, as these things happen in the industry,
I know
Mel Gibson's star rose higher and went into the stratosphere. And in order to sell a movie,
I don't like it though.
Because if you don't have butts in the seats,
but I don't like it.
It's not a fair industry.
It's not a fair industry.
And it's not supposed to be.
Oh, but it could be.
It could be.
It could be.
It could be. But are you casting people based on? Are you casting them based on talent? Are you casting them based on a look or how many Instagram followers they have? There's a lot of really unfair.
This is why you should not be on social media.
It's really tricky. But I also appreciate, and sort of bridging into a lot of actors who do voiceover jobs, specifically like Jenny Slate on Big Mouth, and what's her face who does. She was in Frozen. Anyway, she was voicing, I believe, a black character on the show Central Park. And both actresses actually gave up their jobs.
Oh, Kristen Bell.
Kristen Bell, thank you.
Yeah.
Both actresses gave up their jobs so that black actresses could fill those roles.
Yep.
And I feel like that is a way of really being aware and leveling that playing field. But at the time, again, Mel Gibson was such an astronomical star. The movie he did after this was
I got it.
He did Bird on a Wire, Air America, and then Hamlet. So he was just getting into his sort of writing and directorial debuts too. Mm-hmm. He did a movie called Forever Young, which was really good.
Was it Angels in the Outfield?
He was not an Angels.
What was the baseball one that he was
Gary
in?
Busey was in Angels in the Outfield. Gary Busey played the bad guy in the first movie.
Well, there's your connection.
There you go.
I mean, if you were looking
there's
for something.
There's your Gary Busey reference.
So, Ben, would you recommend this
I
movie?
would recommend the hell out of this movie. If you like movies like Die Hard or Predator or The First Lethal Weapon or any of like the 80s Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies, but actually with some really great depth, a really great comedic back and forth between the two leads.
That's the big difference here.
It ultimately, and I think I mentioned this in the First Lethal Weapon review, it's a love story between two men.
It is.
It's a love story between two men who are very different, who learn how to work together to get shit done, who have different opinions, who are of different races.
But at the end of the day, they respect each other
and
brothers,
care about each other. And they care about each other. They would die for each other.
Yes.
And there's so many incredible adventures and shitty, wacky situations they get themselves into. And there is never a dull moment in this movie. And adding Joe Pesci to it was just putting icing on the cake. It just added to it.
Just
and
a
leveled it up.
dash.
In the third Lethal Weapon movie, they bring in Renee Russo as a really strong matching female character for Martin Riggs. She is a badass. She does martial arts. She's a part of Internal Affairs.
There it is.
She's amazing.
There it is.
I can't wait to review Lethal Weapon 3. But I would recommend the hell out of Lethal Weapon 2. It's a great summer movie if you're looking for some great escapism, but also just a really good story that's well directed, well written, well acted, and it makes you appreciate the movies of yesteryear.
I would say that. I would agree, and I would recommend to people. I don't know if I would recommend to like everybody, but I would definitely recommend to anybody that
It's charming as fuck.
Loves the 80s movies and loves like the fun, funny buddy cop movies.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. It's not that. It's a bit different from that. But at the end of the day, the heart of that kind of a movie is in this. And I think is the start of what we see in a lot of those kinds of movies.
Yes.
So I definitely would recommend it if you want that kind of a movie.
Yeah.
And I think this is great to like watch on a Saturday night with a bunch of friends.
It's a great Saturday movie.
Oh, it's a fun movie. Yeah. So I think that's everything.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching, for tuning in. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us wherever you download your podcasts, especially if you're listening to this. You already know how.
And please remember, too, to share about our podcast, because all of the money that we receive from sponsorship from June and July goes to NAACP.
That's right.
So please, if you can't send money to any of these nonprofits at the moment, that's okay. Just tell people to listen to our podcast, because when they do, then we get more money that we will then donate.
And we personally donated to a great charity today. It's called Color of Change. And they work on racial discrimination, specifically on the Facebook platform. So look up colorofchange.org and learn a little bit about them. It's a great cause. They were recently featured on Pod Save America, which is also a great podcast that you should listen to.
This is so sad.
So,
you guys, right now, the balance that we have is $1.54.
We can do better than that.
We can do better than that.
Listen
for
to
our
the ads.
for our last one that we did, for our last episode, we did Hamilton. We got 21 plays.
Yeah.
Ratatouille, we got 44.
Yeah.
So we need more people to play or at least listen to that first
Just listen
part.
to the ads.
And then once you listen to it, you're hooked. You're like, oh my God, these people are so fucking charming. Can you say power couple? I mean, oh my God. And then they're going to be so grateful that you got turned on to this podcast.
That's
anyways.
Right.
So I know what we're doing next.
I do not.
I'm not going to tell you. And I also know that we're going to have a guest.
Oh my God.
Next. So be sure to pay attention to our Instagram. We will announce the next movie and our next guest. You can find us at CIMAC Podcast. Rocket is snoring so loud right now. Oh, did I wake you up?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, guys.
And share about our podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.